To the Large House Review Committee on June 9th, 2025. My name is Artie Crocker. I'm the chair of the committee, or co-chair of the committee with Mo Handel. I'm also the chair of the planning board at this point. And what I'd like to do is go over, the basic format is going to be welcome you. We'll talk a little bit about the purpose, goals, charge of the committee, what we're supposed to do. Then we're going to go on and Oscar Mertz is going to show you some formats of what we've been looking at or how we've been looking at the different parameters and how we size things. Then we're going to break out into small groups, discuss it, come back, give a recap of what was discussed, then go to questions and answers. That's the basic concept. But to start with, I just want to introduce the committee. So again, my name is Artie Crocker. I'm the co-chair of the committee. Jean McKnight, who I don't see here.
No, online.
Jean McKnight is the representative from the planning board. Marion Cooley, select board member. Heidi Frail, select board member. She's the chair of the select board, as a matter of fact. Again, Mo Handel, co-chair of the committee, a former select board member. Then Tina Burgos, who is the representative from the finance committee. Nick Legris is the representative from the ZBA, but he's not here. Bill Paulson, he's a real estate broker in town. Paul McGovern over there, he's a developer in town, giving us the perspective from a developer standpoint. Then we have Oscar Mertz, who's an architect. Chris Carter, who's basically a citizen at large coming in. We have Rob Dangle, citizens at large. Joe Matthews, Joe might be online. And then Ed Quinlan, citizens at large as well. So what I'd like to start with just reading the charge. I know it sounds, you can all read it, but I'd like to read it so it's verbally on the recording as well. And this charge comes out of the planning board of what this committee is responsible for doing. So the study area shall be all properties located in single residence B and general residence districts, which are the residential zoning districts with the smallest lot size and dimensional requirements. The Large House Review Study Committee shall consider the impact newer or expanded homes are having on the character of the neighborhoods within the studied zoning districts and shall develop recommendations. The Large House Review Committee shall consider, review past reports, plans, and maps prepared by the town committees, town officials, town agencies, and consultants, including the previous Large House Study Committee, which is back around 2017. We will seek input of the neighborhood residents, builders, contractors, real estate agents, property owners, and other as required. It is also expected that the Large House Review Committee shall hold citizens information meetings as we're holding tonight, and we're planning on having 2 others starting in September as well, so please stay tuned for those, and elicit again the input from the public. We're going to review and analyze the current zoning bylaw and planning board regulations and consider amendments to each. Analyze the impact of recent planned and potential new housing constructed in the past 5 years in the residence B and general residence. And then the latter part of it is review and analyze alternative zoning dimensions, restrictions, or limitations that may address the neighborhood concerns. Review the current FAR definition to determine, and FAR stands for Florida Area Ratio, definition to determine whether it is too permissive, and if so, how it should be revised, including whether the floor area designed for human occupancy for the 3rd floor or basement level of the house should be included in the FAR calculation. Prepare recommendations and to amend the zoning bylaws or purpose other regulatory strategies that will protect the characteristics valued by residents in the single residence B and general residence districts. Generally, identify key issues and needs, analyze alternative solutions, and make recommendations to the planning board, both short and long term, within the overall process of the Large House Review Committee. Prepare fiscal impact analysis to accompany recommendations of the committee. And we're also going to coordinate our efforts around the stormwater and tree bylaws. At least we're going to look at what's happening with those and how they may relate to us. So that's myself. Now Mo is going to talk about some of the goals of the committee and purpose.
Okay, thank you, Artie.
You're welcome.
Can everybody hear me? Because I don't know how the mics work here. All right. Our goal for this process, the overarching goal, including this evening, is to find out what you think about the large house issue. We were constituted as a committee to include the many perspectives, as you could tell from the characteristics of the people who were appointed to the committee, as Artie spoke to. But we have to rely on you to let us know what your concerns are and what ideas you may have on this issue. As you can tell from the Planning Board's extensive charge to this committee, we were chartered to look at a broad range of issues related to the replacement housing currently being built in Needham, starting with the single-family zone SRB, which is the smaller of our two single-family districts, containing both conforming lots of around 10,000 square feet and larger, along with pre-existing non-conforming lots prior to 1947 when they were changed. Minimum lots were changed to minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet. Our study looked at 7,000 to 10,000 square foot lots. As Needham is essentially built out, almost all new homes are built on lots created by the demolition of existing homes. Public contributions through these community meetings will provide the crucial framework for the committee's work, and your input in this and subsequent sessions will be factored into the final report recommendations to the Planning Board. The committee's report will then be reviewed and refined by the Planning Board to prepare any final zoning bylaw amendments to be brought to town meeting. During their process, there will be additional public hearings to review any proposed changes, and any changes they propose to the zoning bylaw will require the approval of the Needham Town Meeting, tentatively targeted for the annual town meeting in the spring of 2026. Needham is not the only community to be dealing with the issues that arise from this situation, so we have been talking to other similar communities to better understand their approach to regulating new homes. Needham, too, has had a history of regulating new construction of single-family homes, most recently in 2017 when new regulations were established. So far, we have met with the chair of the Wellesley Planning Board, and we will be meeting with Lexington and Concord planners and officials to get a better sense of what they do with respect to the construction of new single-family homes on similarly sized lots. At the end of the day, whatever comes out of this process will have to respect Needham's specific needs and wants. For this initial breakout work session, which is our first, we are asking you to gather in small groups around each of the tables in the back. One of the large House committee members will join each table. There are 4 prompts to trigger discussion. You will also find them on a sheet on the table. We also want to hear from you about anything you may think that we should be talking about, even if you haven't heard it in any of the presentations this evening. So the purpose of this meeting tonight is to engage people who have an interest in this issue and to hear what they think. And I think that finally, the housing issue or new construction of housing is a series of questions and issues from a gazillion different perspectives. And some of those perspectives are in line with each other, and some of them conflict. Our job is to try to figure out what people in Needham want over this issue and to come up with ways to make sure that that happens. And again, and I should not fail to emphasize this, there will be a lot of public participation at every step of the way, including meetings of the Planning Board and other public hearings. Please, if you have an interest in this issue, attend those meetings or watch the YouTube videos to make sure that you have a full understanding. Nobody should be able to say that they don't know about this if they have an interest in it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mo. And also, you can look at the recordings, past and future ones, of the Large House Review Committee, and any comments you have, please forward them to the Planning Department as well. Now, Oscar is going to take us through basically the process we went through, the initial process to this point, of what we went through to start to figure something out. I'll put it as simple as that, to try to figure out how we're going to measure stuff. And so, Oscar, why don't you take it away from here? Where are you, Oscar? There you are. Thank you, Oscar.
Thank you, Artie and Mo. You're looking at a chart right now, so I dare say I do not want to jump into the weeds right away, but I will say stay at a high level here. But suffice it to say, that's a slice of our zoning bylaws, and it happens to be focused on the two different types of housing that we were talking about, SRB and general residence. SRB is our smaller of the single-family residential districts, and general residence has single-family, but it's generally our two-family district. What I will say in these numbers that you're looking at on the chart is that they are very important, but not all of them are actually being used currently to be the limiting factor for large houses. The two that are probably most likely to be the ones that are most restrictive are the floor area ratio and the coverage, maximum lot coverage. You'll see in the SRB in those two columns close to the right that the FAR and the maximum lot actually have different numbers. Those different numbers are triggered depending on the size of the lot. And so it's important to just keep that in mind. Again, we can go through more detailed questions at another time. I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds, but suffice to say, what we have been looking at is essentially fact-finding. We're trying to get ready for this meeting and for doing more research and getting more feedback from you guys to help us figure out what we're focusing on. And so we've been doing some homework to see what's been happening in Needham since 2017, since the last large house review. And then we're also, as Mo was talking about, getting involved in some other towns, getting some data so we can actually do some comparisons of what is being built on similar sized lots in other towns. That's going to be some good information for us to be able to kind of gauge where Needham is relative to other towns. There are also processes in other towns for large houses that require, some towns have different kinds of measuring, some towns have large house reviews. So those are other aspects of the large house process, which are other kinds of comments that we can talk about. So currently, I think we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. We, as was mentioned, this group has been doing some, call it due diligence, call it doing our homework to see what's being built right now in Needham. And we have done two sets of studies. The first set is actually on non-conforming, and the second set is on conforming lots. I'll simply say that non-conforming lots are essentially under 10,000 square feet typically, and they have dimensions that are under the requirement for a single-family lot, which is some dimensions that show up when you look at a 10,000 square foot lot. And so the conforming lots are 10,000 and above, and the non-conforming are essentially under 10,000. What we did with those was to find some sample houses and then start to analyze, kind of pick apart what those houses represented in terms of how big they were on their lots. And then we actually did some surveys of this committee to get a sense of whether or not some of these houses were big or okay for their lots. And this was, again, trying to get a sense of what Needham has been building. So if you look at this first slide, you'll see that in the important data here is that you have setbacks on the side, setbacks on the front, and you have a frontage. The frontage dimension is 80 feet, and then the side setbacks have two numbers. Those are important because those are the kinds of numbers that we may or may not want to think about when we look at adjusting house sizes, but currently those are the size setbacks for these conforming lots. The next drawing, next slide, is an actual three-dimension of a potential house, again showing you what those setbacks look like, but now it's a three-dimensional view of what that house could look like. If we go to the non-conforming lots, you'll see that now the frontage is under 80 feet, meaning it's non-conforming to what a single-family lot should be, which is 80 feet minimum. So then the setbacks get smaller. So these setbacks are 12 and 14. The reason you see two numbers is that there's actually a requirement in a house design that after 32 feet of the side of the house, you have to set back 2 feet. So that's why there are two dimensions there. Again, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I will answer questions if anyone has them on those particulars. And you'll notice here that on the non-conforming, the setbacks are smaller. If you're familiar with all the small lots that are in town, those are all those older town lots. Those are the smaller non-conforming lots. And so you definitely have a sense in those lots where houses are closer together, there's more of a sense that those houses are closer together. And that's partly why this committee has been focusing on the smaller lots. We think that's an area that we should be focusing on so we can kind of gauge how big those houses are and then look at opportunities for how those might be adjusted. And again, this is all just doing our homework, essentially. The next chart, keep going, that one, is getting into the weeds a little bit, but it describes, if you look at those three columns, there's a lot size, there's a coverage related to that lot size, and then that basically shows you what that allowable coverage would be in square feet, if you do the math. But you can see that basically in our residence districts now, there is a coverage limit that is, as I've described, above the 7,500. It basically continues at 25%. So all of those lots going higher, which is what we've been looking at, 7,500 to 10,000 square foot lots and above, are 25%. So this is the low end of the scale of the lots, but we didn't look at a lot of those really, really small lots. There aren't many of them. Now, getting into the floor area ratio, thank you. Next one. This is sort of the heart of where we are right now in Needham. The only ratio, or the only measuring stick that's really been coming into play, if we looked at all the houses that we've studied, almost all of them were hitting the maximum FAR of what was required on those sites, whether it was either there are two sizes of lots. Ironically, there's a 12,000 square foot limit. I'm not exactly sure why they picked 12,000, but there's a lot change, there's a FAR change when the lot gets to 12,000 square feet. Again, in all the work that we've been doing so far, looking at some sample houses, the FAR is quite often the limiting factor. Most of the houses that have been built are pretty much up against that 30.38. So I'll just continue with one other issue. The thing that we have noticed in a lot of the studies is that some of the houses are very tall. There's a height limit in town that's 35 feet. And so one of the things that's interesting is whether or not there's some adjustments that may be made, but there are currently no limits in Needham that are lower than 35 feet. So the 35-foot maximum is what is being used now for maximum height. And there are also some other ways of measuring height, which you see in the description here. There's actually an overall height limit of 41 feet if you have a sloping site. So I think that's pretty much to give you a summary of where we are. We have been essentially rolling up our sleeves and trying to get information about Needham, what's been built in 5 to 7 years. And we are now also going to be starting to get information from Wellesley, from Concord, from Lexington, so we can we can compare what's being built on lots in Needham and what's being built on similar sized lots in other towns as a measuring stick.
That's it, Mo. So Mo is going to describe, we're going to be breaking out into these groups, and please, hopefully everyone will join us. In a nutshell, we're looking at houses, and how do they look? How do they visually look? What is the bulk? What is the size of it? But then in order to make some changes, we have to mathematically know exactly what's going on. So that's in essence what's going through our committee. We're looking, then we're finding out, well, what does it mean? How do they measure? And that's what Oscar has done a lot of time. The working group has done a lot of work on that as far as figuring that out. But again, when all is said and done, to some degree, it's visually what do they look like? And if we want to make changes, we have to mathematically know what that is. So Mo, why don't you go into this?
All right, so we have four prompts for the group discussions. And the first one is, what brought you here tonight? And let me just piggyback onto what I already said. Don't be intimidated by all of the technical descriptions. Those are all aimed at trying to understand the bulk of a building on a lot. And that's what we grapple with technically, but the problem that we're trying to address is a sense that we get from people in the community that large houses are an issue. That's why this committee is named the Large House Committee. but don't worry about the technical aspect. Think about what concerns you about that issue and why did you come this evening. And if you're watching this on television or on Zoom, feel free to write in to this committee, care of the Community Development Office at Town Hall, or through Town Hall,
The planning board.
Planning Board,
needhamma.gov.
needhamma.gov, thank you.
Planning at needhamma.gov.
But let us know what you think, because we're trying to grapple with what makes people have concerns about this issue. So that's the first prompt. Why did you come? And then the last time that the town did something meaningful on housing size regulations, and it affected design as well, was in 2017. So the question we'd like you to also discuss is, how do you feel about houses that have been built in Needham over that period of time? Was there a difference in what you saw in your neighborhood and how it affected you, or how you feel about it? The third prompt is, do you think the town should be regulating or moderating house size differently than it currently does? And would a change impact you personally? How does this issue affect your quality of life or how you feel about living in the community or in your neighborhood? And finally, on the fourth prompt, how has your neighborhood changed over the last 10 years? And if it has changed, has that change been positive for you or negative? And if so, why and how? So that's what we'd like you to do in the group discussions. We have several tables laid out. There will be somebody there from the committee. I think given the size of the people, the group here tonight, that we should have more than adequate staffing for each of your tables. And we'd like you to have that discussion. What's the period of time we've allocated? Half an hour.
Half an hour.
So then we'll come back and one person from each table can tell us if they came up with a consensus of issues that we should be looking at that we may have not addressed in our presentation tonight or that we may not have thought about. So we'll start that process now.
I'm sorry.
We're going to start that process.
Yeah, start that now. Also, there's an online, people on Zoom, they will be forming basically their own room where they can talk about it as well, similar to what's going on here. So again, please, I don't know, break up into, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 or 7, whatever works. Go to a table. I know we did it last Wednesday. It actually worked great for the tree committee. So go to a table, start discussing what it means to you.
Sit with whomever you want to be sitting with. We're not trying to structure those groups.
I think it's going to be.
Hello. Hello. Can you turn this mic on? Hello.
How many people are online?
I don't know.
9?
35 maybe? I don't know. Is this mic on? Yeah. Everyone back? Committee members, please come back. And members of the public, thank you very much. But let's wrap it up so we can start on to the, summarizing the reports, what coming back from each table. Then we can get to some more completely public questions and answers. I think this whoever's taking it, whoever you want to do it, do it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, no, that's fine. Whoever wants to do it, do it. Committee, let's get back to the front, please. We want to have a report from each table, kind of basically summarize what's going on. Then we will get to the public comments / questions and answers to what degree we can. No, those are going to Alex. Yeah, so whoever you want to have report from your table, it is your choice. It can either be the committee member, it can be someone else at the table who is taking the notes, who is not taking notes, whoever you want to do it, it's your choice at each table.
Our table didn't discuss that.
I took some notes. Okay, so we'll start with, where are we? Alex, we're all set, I take it? We're live, right? We're streaming again? Okay. So let's start, hey, Tina, why don't we start with you? Are you going to report or have someone from your table do it?
I took notes. What do you want me to, I'm sorry, what do you want me to do?
You'll do it? Okay.
Just go question by question?
Yeah, just some highlights of it. Doesn't have to be every single one, just like four or five highlights, and that's enough.
So we talked about the character of the town and sort of changing demographics. How do we maintain what we currently have, and how do we deal with the changes that our town is facing, given different challenges people are facing in their current life stages? Can this be controlled, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? But the folks joined tonight because they want to become more involved with the town, given current events that have been happening, particularly with Envision, with the MBTA Communities Act. So it's great to see that folks are coming out to get involved and voice their opinions. Everybody in our group really values the old homes in their neighborhoods and throughout town. So there was a lot of conversation about how do we sort of preserve these, how do we put more value on these and make people appreciate these buildings. Is there a way to designate historical value to them? You know, can we keep them in need instead of tearing them down? A little bit of talk about aesthetics with the new builds, particularly garages. Jean, we were thinking of you there. And we talked about why people are here in Needham. It's about schools, the commute to town, and once you're here, you really appreciate the community, and quite a couple people here in our group, because they are so in love with Needham, are going to age in place, and there are some challenges with that. That's about it.
Thank you, Tina.
Yep.
Hey, Oscar, why don't we go to you now?
Yes, Gabby. Hi, Gabby. My scribe, my sophomore high school student.
What is your full name, Gabby?
My name's Gabby Grappo. I'm a sophomore at Needham High School, and I also live in Needham. So a couple of the things that we were talking about was property value in general going up and down. The housing materials for knockdowns are very costly, and climate change and water mitigations are a huge issue with floodings, and it also relates to the trees issue of cutting down trees because that helps soak up all the water. So because we're cutting down the trees, it's leading to more floods of the housing. Supply and demand is a big issue. Checks and balances was mentioned. Generally, affordability. If somebody's looking for a smaller home, it's still quite expensive in Needham, so that could always be, adjusted. And then just generally adjusting height restrictions and considering how garages affect the sizes and laws for zoning and housing.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Gabby, very much.
I will add a couple thoughts. We did discuss the challenges with going back and forth with neighborhoods that have changed. They're sort of gone over, they're becoming, now neighborhoods are all big houses, or they're in the process of changing. And so what does it look like if we all of a sudden start to implement changes to this? What does that mean for homeowners? There's concern, obviously, about what would be the impact on potential sale prices for these homeowners. So I think we all know that that's something that we are going to be looking at to analyze. I think one of the things that's potentially important, we talked about the review process in Wellesley, where there was an implementation of, we talked about checks and balances, that there is potentially a way that we could implement some changes that would have more process so that neighbors might get involved. If there was an option for a tenant or a homeowner or a builder to do something bigger, maybe that's a process that we could start to think about. Again, I think the one comment was about unintended consequences. So just knowing what we potentially could do for changes to the limitations of houses, what are all of the potential consequences of those changes, both positive and negative. So I think that was just another
Thank you.
way to sum it up.
Thank you, Oscar. Appreciate it very much. Heidi?
Thank you. The houses are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Older homes are dwarfed by newer neighbors. New homes of 25 years ago is now the smallest house on the street. One thing we heard over and over in different iterations is there's something fishy going on with that FAR calculation. And there's a request for space that exists to be counted. So basements and attics shouldn't be excluded from the FAR, or whatever the determination of massing is, that all the space that exists needs to be counted, and it shouldn't be exemptable in any way. That we need starter homes and step downs for downsizing. Hang on a second, there's a lot happening here. Thank you, Oscar. A real concern about the way that value and taxes are calculated, and how any changes that are made here could affect that. And so a request that all of that be gamed out ahead of time. Also a request for a visual of how any changes that are determined would change the house shape and size, and how that would work on different size lots. A real concern about loss of privacy, and basically the impact on the neighbor of the houses that are built around it. So whether that's lot valuation, or privacy, or flooding, or environmental impacts from a new build, or whatever, that all of these things impact the neighbors, and that should be taken into account. And I think that's pretty much it. Just that the new regulations should be easy to understand and should be enforced.
Thank you, Heidi.
Count what exists.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it. Ed Quinlan?
So first comment is that people definitely feel strongly about this issue. That came across clearly at our table. I think in general, folks felt that the large house versus small lot is a problem the town needs to deal with. That wasn't universal, but that was, I think, the consensus on the table. They also, a number of people said that they really want to see coordination by our committee with the other two committee, the trees, the stormwater, because, and we say we're going to do that, but people really felt that it shouldn't just be check in and talk, but really integrate the findings of these committees, because they are interrelated issues. There's concern about financial interests on existing homes with changes to regulations. Setbacks with the big houses, you have a smaller house on an existing lot where they have plenty of space beyond the required setbacks. Now a new house, larger house, goes in, they're building up to the setbacks, it kind of changes the character of the neighborhood. What else? That's really it. I mean, a lot of what people have been saying, so I'll stop there. We had a lot more comments, but I think that's covers the important ones.
Thank you, I'd appreciate it. Next is Mo Handle, your table.
Our table also was not inconsistent. Oh, our table was also not inconsistent with what you've been hearing from the other tables. A couple of the things that came up strongly were the folks who are at our table, as I'm sure many of you here, were very concerned about what's happening, and they feel negatively affected by the change to much larger homes on the single-family lots in the zoning districts. One of the comments that was made, which is interesting that I haven't heard yet, is the psychology of knowing that if you look at a house on your street and it's older, that it's going to be coming down. So you get a sense of impending doom if you're invested in how that neighborhood feels and looks. And that was, I think, a very interesting observation. A lot of concern about runoff from the larger, newer homes and the amount of impervious surface that's resulting from those newer homes. The loss of light that some of those homes cost their neighbors, and also a concern was expressed about raising lot levels and how that actually makes the situation much worse for folks. That's pretty much it. It's fairly consistent. The other observation, though, I would make is that some of the folks at our table moved to Needham because it was more affordable than other communities, and that seems to be a reality that is changing to the negative in terms of its ability to accommodate people who don't have the economic means to live in these larger, more expensive homes.
Thank you, Mo, appreciate it. And at my table, Marion Cooley was at my table as well, so Marion, please give us a summary of what's happening here.
So I would say that our table started relatively early on, where there seemed to be agreement that people didn't feel that maintaining the look and feel of neighborhoods is important. And there was an observation that houses have gone from Victorians to ranches to splits to colonials to something new. So those aesthetics are going to change over time. So that's not where people were focused. They focused more on how they felt about things that occurred around them, right? There was a concern about looking up at a castle. There was a concern about the setback from the street, and how if there was a significant deviation from the setback on the street, that people perceived that or felt that differently from some other things. As other people noted, the impact from trees and stormwater that people felt on their property from new builds was a concern. And then I think also as noted, there was a concern about whether the house does lose value from the change. I think that's something this committee will have to help people to understand what the impact of that is. And lastly, in recognizing that we would like a community with some economic diversity, that we still have places where people could buy that could be a place to call their own.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you, Marion. Appreciate it very much. And Bill Paulson.
I was with Tina.
Oh, you were Tina. Okay, Chris Carter.
So a lot of the general feeling was that it depended on the lot for what the size of the house should be. It needs to fit well on the lot. There was a little bit of a disagreement about whether the houses were too large or if they were, or if they should have more flexibility, but generally we agreed no larger, but it really was dependent upon the size of the lot for what was appropriate. Another concern was setbacks, mostly for the side neighbor setbacks. If there's a large shadow cast over it, nothing can grow in between. I'm also concerned for front setbacks for consistency with the neighborhood and also visibility in the driveways. In general, this has accelerated over the last 10 years, and specifically in the last 5 years is really where it's become a bigger issue perceived. There also was a concern about property value if there was too much of a restriction. So obviously I mentioned before, it's something that our committee will look at. Another one that was a holistic thinking of the whole entire town, whether it be what's allowed for the MBTA Community Zoning Act, other building plans being developed with the rest of the projects.
Thank you, Chris. Rob Dangle.
We had some really good conversations at our table. really there's concern about lack of diversity in both housing sizes and availability and how that's going to affect the demographic of the town. I think there was a general consensus that we wanted Needham to be more open to kind of people from all walks of life, and just what we're seeing with the large houses just yields a lack of options from an affordability perspective. Let's see, there was a lot of concern at the table around certain developers, and residents felt like that they wanted more information about the building process and what their rights were to contest or air any kind of problems or grievances while construction was going on, and what the actual regulations are and what developers are allowed to do. There was a feeling of lack of respect of the local neighbors and just what the disruption is on them during construction and after construction, and they just wanted to be more part of that process. There's some feedback around design choices. There was, people don't like the trend and the way the houses look these days as far as color choices and some of the design elements. There's a lot of concern around flooding, and I think the trend that was noticed is that with new construction, both in adjacent streets and adjacent lots, that any building that's been done in recent years has caused a lot of disruption from just a water runoff and flooding issue. How do we solve some of these problems? People thought that FAR should definitely be included as far as basement and attics. There was a general feeling that a lot of the trees that are being lost, and probably addressed by another subcommittee, but the trend is that lots are being completely cleared of trees, and really dislike that trend for a multitude of reasons. Let's see. And we had, there was also a question of how come it took us so long as a town to revisit this large house problem, if you will. I also did appreciate that we had a developer at our table to give us their feedback. And what was interesting to me, one perspective is that, if we increase regulations or increase the restrictions, that could drive housing costs actually in the wrong direction, could drive them up, because as developers have to adhere to more stringent regulations, or they couldn't build as large of a house or something like that, it could drive up the costs. But the other effect is if developers are restricted on being able to build houses of current sizes that are being allowed right now, that could actually drive property values down and what they can pay for a lot. So there was some concern there. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, were you at?
That's at Oscar's table.
Okay, Oscar's
What
table.
did I miss? Yeah.
So we covered, what?
Yeah,
And
Paul,
no second bites at the apple here.
okay. That's the same. Paul, if I missed anything, hit me.
I think you got most things. One of the things definitely that came up was the impact any new restrictions that will be put in place would have on the property value to people who are living in older houses currently and are considering or would be considering the option of selling to a developer, to a builder. That was a concern. Having said that, the people who had that concern also were concerned about some of the larger houses. They all had suffered consequences from stormwater as a result of houses that had been built. So while they were concerned about the property value, they also acknowledged other aspects of the issue as well, and that the large houses do have an impact.
Thank you, Paul. Alex, who is someone online going to present that? Okay, Joe, you're up to present the online conversation.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I get the echo. So bad news is that we weren't really able to have a discussion, but the good news is that's because we had over 40 people in the room at one point. So basically turned into like a mini public hearing. We're able to have 15 or 16 people speak to the issues, and a lot of the things have already been mentioned, and I will just run through them quickly. Trees was a very common concern. Water runoff and property grading, the level of the land was an issue. Some people had no problem with the size of new houses, and some people thought they were too large. And then some people also said, as was already heard, that the problem was the size of the house in relation to the lot, rather than just the absolute size. The lack or reduction of yard space, affordability was an issue. One thing that wasn't mentioned, I think, yet was light pollution. And people were concerned, even if they had no problem with the houses, maybe they had some of these negative impacts. The distance between houses and kind of a lack of feeling of having the same privacy that maybe they did before, and overall change of neighborhood into something that they did not have when they had arrived in Needham. And finally, the same concerns around lack of housing diversity, decreasing starter homes, and downsizing opportunities. And that sums up most of the ideas.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. So we went longer on these discussions than was originally planned, which is actually fine because we had a lot of great discussions. That's not going to change how long people want to really the comments and questions and answers. You know, I'm not sure how long we'll stay, but if you have questions and answers, we'll try to stay as long as we can. That being said, we'll see what happens. So now at the comments and questions and answer period. So online, raise your hand. In the Powers Hall, please come to the microphone and state your name and your address, please. And for those that do ask questions online, please be cognizant of what is in your background, because that may very well be showing what's behind you. So first up, name and address, please.
Sure. Louise Miller, 5 North Hill Avenue.
Oh, is that microphone on?
Yep, it is. Okay. So I think all of the comments, and I was in Marianne and Artie's group, and they represented very, very fairly what we said. But I think one of the first things that has to happen is defining what is it that we want this committee, which problem is it that we want this committee to solve? I mean, I think if it's stormwater, then the answer is going to be probably more of an engineering type answer. If the question is affordability and diversity of housing, then we will have a different question and therefore a different answer. So I think it's really important to first define that before you start moving forward and trying to decide what to do. I will make a pitch for, I don't think we can regulate taste. Whatever you like or don't like, someone else may feel completely differently about it. And I think the same is true for landscaping as well. If it doesn't affect your property, different people have different tastes. The only other thing that I would say is, and I asked this question in our group, is are there certain areas of town where you have smaller lots? Are there other areas of town where you have larger lots? And so therefore, might you focus more on one or another one of those areas of town when you're looking at the problem once the problem has been defined? And I won't repeat what I said in our group. I'm sure you'll have more of these, so we'll have more opportunity to speak, about economics and other things.
Thank you, Louise. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Artie.
And I think, Louise, you are perfect in your timing. And when people come up, please keep your comments to about 3 minutes tops. And Louise, I think you hit it on the mark.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience or anyone online, Alex? You can switch between. Is there anyone online with a hand raised? No. Someone else in the audience? Your name and address, please.
9 Semino Road. I know there's been a lot of talk about the tear downs, but I'm wondering what consideration is being given to the existing houses that exist and side setbacks and FAR and things of that nature. Has that been discussed at all with the boards?
Anthony, ask the question again, please.
The existing homes, if someone wants to add on to it, how's this going to affect them?
We've been looking at pretty much everything, really. I mean, we're looking at, again, the house size, the setbacks. I'm not sure if we've had a distinct focus on the existing homes and in addition added on to them. I'm not certain about that, but there's been mention to it. But we're looking at the overall size and the setbacks in general, Lou.
So it will affect existing homes with the additions if they want to add on?
I don't know the answer to that. Are you saying that if the additions go beyond the go on these
No, in
parameters?
2017, the side setbacks impacted some existing homes. So if you extend those to the new proposal, it could affect them even greater.
I appreciate what you're saying, and that was brought up. I don't know where we're going to go with that. I honestly do not know, but it was brought up, Lou. I remember that distinctly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else in the audience and anyone online, Alex? This is... I think we had some great conversations, but we have Doug.
So I was the one in my...
Name and address, please.
Sorry. Doug Fox, Mark Tree Road. I was the one that made the comment that I hated that it took so long for us to revisit this because it was so obvious when we were voting on town meeting for it last time that it wasn't enough. And I think we need to be cognizant that it might take 9 years before we touch this again. And last time when we were looking at this, we overcorrected for trying to protect property values of those with the very small lots. And those are the same people now that the house is worth nothing now. The land is worth so much more because we allowed so much to be built there. And those are the people that got the really big tax bills. And that was because at the time, the discussion was always, we had to prove we were going to do no harm with anything we did. And I would like to see more balance because doing nothing causes harm too. There should be some proof on both sides, proof that when someone says that this is gonna harm property values, this is gonna do that, let's really do analysis on similar communities to Needham that have made changes and what actually happened. Because if we do nothing or don't do enough, that will certainly cause harm.
Thank you, Doug, and we're definitely looking at other towns and towns around us, so towns that we consider equivalent to some degree as Needham. Next up, name and address, please.
Thank you. Gary at Jamie and Meeting House Circle. Doug, I appreciate your comments. The 2017, 16, 17 changes did have unintentional consequences. I think the efforts were well-intended, but the unintentional consequences were the triggering of all of these tear downs that really accelerated. One positive consequence is we now have a band, a rock group called the Tear Downs. Needham. They're outstanding. Maybe you guys could invite them to the next meeting. They are very good. So by triggering unintentional consequences that no one foresaw, I guess my question is, now that sort of the horse is out of the barn and so many neighborhoods have already been transformed, as we were talking with Oscar about, should we go ahead and change the regulations again? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. If we do we risk creating new unintended consequences? In other words, you can't undo what's already been done. Will it reduce existing home values? Excuse me. Will it disrupt the redevelopment of neighborhoods that are 70, 80% there? They've already been transformed. Will it discourage responsible builders? And there are many responsible builders in Needham that have really done a good job of proportionally, rebuilding and not overdoing it. And then again, looking at the reassessment we just went through in town, will this potentially negatively impact tax revenue? Because we're now relying on these higher land values, which were triggered by the surge of value due to tear downs. So I think we just have to be careful. Everyone's intentions, I think, are very good, but I think we just have to watch out for those unintended consequences. And you're doing a great job of looking at other communities. What have they done, and how has it impacted them? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Alex, someone online?
Hi, Mara Hicks, 22 Richard Road. I just wanted to address a few of the things that were talked about in the online group, and I think Joe Matthews did a really nice job of summarizing a lot of what was said. But I did want to address the fact that a lot of comments were made about how big some of the houses are. Why do people need 6 bedrooms or 7 bathrooms and things like that? And I just want to recognize the fact that the use of the house has changed a lot. And because they are so expensive, you have dual income people working there. A lot of people are working from home. They may also have live-in help. You possibly have multi-generational with adult children or maybe parents or in-laws, living there. And so I think that if we are starting to restrict certain things, we're going to prevent people actually from being able to use a house the way they need to, and they're going to go somewhere else and possibly not come to Needham because they can't build what they need. I also wanted to address the fact that I'd love to see some more outdoor things maybe regulated as far as light pollution and grading and drainage and things like that. With the new builds, and not just setbacks and things with the physical structure itself and how it's put together. And then lastly, I wanted to address the fact that people were bringing up they'd like to see more environmental restrictions being brought in for the housing. And I do think that building code actually addresses a lot of this already, and that when you add more of those types of restrictions, you're going to increase the price of the house and make it less affordable. And I'm hearing a lot of people talking about affordability. I don't really know how much more restriction would be worth the extra cost that you would be charging people and preventing people from moving here. Thank you for your time.
And anyone else in the audience or anyone else online right now? Don't be shy. You weren't shy on the tables when they were talking. I don't see anyone else right now. No one else online and no one else in the audience? Well, we did have a lot of great discussions. We had a lot of great summaries from those discussions. So I think that perhaps people already said what they wanted to say, and we have it on the record from the summaries. So thank you very much. I thank you very much for everyone coming. The Large House Review Committee will be continuing through the summer as we're related to with our meetings. What? Oh, sign up for the news flashes online. I don't know. It's in the slide deck. I'm sorry. There's a slide deck. It's right there. There it is, right there. Go to the slide deck. There's how you can sign up for the summaries. You can also do the survey as well. So please look for our meetings. Look when they are. If you can't see them live, look for the recordings and pay attention to what's going on. Send us feedback. Please send us feedback. We need it. And our next scheduled hearing similar to this, I believe, is tentative for September 15th. Lee, is that it? September 15th?
Oh, the next community meeting will be in September. There's a schedule, I think, there.
Yeah, there it is.
On the slide, so there's a plan for 2 more community meetings. One will be held in early September. The other will be held in November. I think the committee's going to be working over the summer, based upon the input that you've got, looking at potential modifications to the regulations, and we'll be coming forward, I think, with some kind of concept to present to the community in early September.
Yeah, so we truly do not know which way we're going to go. I mean, we've talked about a lot of different things, and how we go has a lot to do with the public and what's coming towards us. And so please give us feedback, please pay attention. So that's the only way we're going to get something that's the best for the community. And so I thank you very much, and look for the new meetings come up. Miriam, you have, yeah, please do.
I was going to say, Alex, if you could put the QR code back up. I also want to note for people, by the time we come back at the end of the summer, I do expect that we are going to have some specific proposals for people to react to. So just in terms of timeline, that will be a really key time to be checking back in. But give us feedback first. Thanks.
Yeah, Rob, please.
One other thing that I mentioned at our table, if you folks have feedback or have ideas or just want to bounce something off of us, you can contact anyone on this committee. Our email addresses or our ability to get contacted should be readily available.
But it's best to go through the planning board.
It's best to go through planning board.
Yeah.
Some people may not be comfortable with that, so we want to make it as easy as possible for people to get their feedback. So whatever way you guys choose to do that, please do it. We want your feedback.
Yeah, please do. And as Marion was saying, by the time we come back in September, we would have been much further along than we are now, having some idea which direction, how we're going to take this. And then it's going to, and then from here, it'll, after our third meeting, after we finish our part of it, it'll go to the planning board, and the planning board will have a couple of meetings. But when it hits the planning board, we hope to have something that is the right thing. I don't know how else to phrase it. We hope to have what's the right thing for the town when it does hit the planning board. But when it does hit the planning board, it doesn't mean, it's still something could change. But until then, I thank you very much for coming tonight, and we look forward to seeing you at further meetings, even at the meetings that we have before September, the September online hearing. So thank you very much, and I think that we're closed out tonight. We didn't officially open it, so I don't think we have to have a motion to close, so I think we're done. I don't think we didn't have an official, it was a public hearing. Now, could I have a motion to, well, I'll take a motion. Do I have a second? Okay.
You need a roll call.
Hold on, I need a roll call vote, Artie. Joe?
Go down the line.
Yep, Joe?
And Jean?
Yeah, Joe, we're roll call
Aye.
vote to close it?
Aye.
Okay. Jean?
Yes.
Yes. Oscar? Yes. Heidi? Yes. Tina? Yes. Ed? Yes. Mo?
Yes.
Paul? Yes. Rob? Chris? Who was this guy? Paul, the other Paul? Bill. I'm sorry, Bill. Let me say it. Sorry about that, Bill. Bill. And Marion?
Yes.
And the chair votes, the co-chair votes yes. Thank you.